welcome back to Snap Publishing, where we discuss the secrets of Edward Leeds Scanlon's Coral Castle and its connection to the periodic table, the Temple of Solomon, the Zodiac, and DNA. All right, so we're going to get into Job 41:13. And it says, right after what I mentioned earlier about God not concealing Leviathan's parts, power, and comely portion. And if he did that for Leviathan, he did that for Behemoth as well. Guaranteed. So this verse 13 says, who can discover the face of his garment, or who can come to him with his double bridle? So with that singled out version of the periodic table visible, well, let's talk about the temple graphic. That's a set of jaws. Like I say, it covers a lot of territory. If you, instead of opening it up this way, you turn it back the other way. But you can get the Holy Grail is also Jachin and Boaz, the pillars. Or you can see the sleeping version, which is the singled out version of the periodic table, where I depict it with Jacob on his deathbed, okay? And that's a human just laying down on top of the periodic table. And I've showed you the one with Noah's Ark above it. So there's more than one way to skin that cat. That periodic table is very malleable. And there's many layers to it. And I believe it has a connection to where Jesus said, in his Father's house, there are many mansions. This is part of what that he's talking about. Okay, that is he's alluding to what I'm telling you the periodic table is capable of. And the Bible. If the Bible equals the periodic table, if you can imagine the double image, the mirror image, it's a set of jaws. That's Leviathan is a crocodile. Well, you could say an alligator, but mainly a crocodile because it's talking about Egypt. The Nile crocodiles. So if you imagine that as this device, like a set of jaws, a lot of what you're reading about in that description of Leviathan, that's what you're actually reading. So the double bridle, if you are into horses, you know that a single bridle doesn't have the bit. And it's called something. It has a strange name. I don't know what the name of it is. But those they give to beginners. So people who are experienced have the bridle that has the bit. It's called a double bridle. Okay, so it grabs the animal around the head and through the mouth. So you'd have to ask an equestrian why that is, why they need the bit. I would imagine because they're doing a lot of maneuvering and they want that horse to respond rapidly because they're very experienced. Beginners don't have to worry about that. So I guess why put the bit in the animal's mouth? This ties into something I want to touch upon, where if you think about the tablets of stone that Moses had the law carved into by God's finger initially, and then Moses broke them, and God had to give him another set. Now pay attention, because Moses got upset and he smashed the first set of tablets. And this time God made him use his hand and a chisel and carve it out and fix what he broke. Okay? Because God gives you something once, and if you mess it up, it's up to you to fix it. That is a really good lesson. Moses learned an important lesson. Hey, I give you something, don't break it. And I'm the same way. I give something to somebody and they break it or lose it, you'll never get it again. But I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, get on my bully pulpit. But that gets into another important aspect of, if you take a single book and you open it up, now you have two halves of a whole. So the law, which by the way, if you spell it backwards is wall, I'll get into that in a different video. But you open it up, now you have two halves. You look at that temple periodic table graphic that I have. Okay, you take that singled out periodic table and you double it. And you do go this way with it, you end up with Jason and Boaz graphic. If you go this way with it, you end up with the temple. Okay? And it's not just a pillar, it's also what they refer to as the Holy Grail, the chalice that Jesus used in the Last Supper. Won't go down that rabbit hole. This comes up over and over and over again. And that is why it specifically says, coming at Leviathan with a double bridle. Okay? So when I talk about these three unclean spirits, the frogs in the book of Revelation, chapter 17, verse 3 through chapter 18, verse 16. And I'll bring that up. This gets into the great whore of Babylon. And I've already covered that in another series of videos. The GWB is also GWV. B and V, I've already covered it. You want to know why they're connected. A B is a V and a V is a B. Suffice it to say, trust me, okay? So that GWV, GWB is the same as the BMW or the VW as in Volkswagen. It's the 124875 pattern, 369. The V is the 369 or the B, and the W is the 124875. All right. It gets into, let's see, it's Revelation 16:13. And these are the vial judgments. Okay, so we're talking about Revelation 16, 13, and 14. And this is one of those scriptures where if you read it and you don't know much about the Bible, you're going to be lost. You're going to be like, what the? It's just another rabbit hole on top of rabbit holes on top of rabbit holes. And when you first start reading the Bible, you're like, whoa, information overload. It's so easy. Once you understand, anytime you see things in threes, it's the 9, 6, and the 3. And then it goes 9, 6, 3 on your this way and that way. And these frogs are no different. They're unclean spirits. So when I was in Bible college, a lot of people ask the ministers, what is this? And they're just like, they're unclean spirits. One guy had a really good description. He said, you got Father, Son, and Spirit, right? Holy Trinity. This is the unholy Trinity. And I could get into very specific stuff, what these three things represent. And there's many aspects to them. And they're always found in threes. And you could get into the real dark, black tantric practices of people who self-destruct. They what do you call it? They're into very self-destructive heroin use, prostitution, pornography, real hardcore stuff, and real dark living. Okay? Gothic, just self-hate. And there's levels to that. Bestiality videos and things involving children and all these things that are against the law. And if somebody with kids like me or a child like me was to ever run into this stuff, they would go berserk. And that's why they keep it, on the dark side of town, because married people don't play. Billy Bob and his shotgun will always defeat the Satanists with all their money and all their, trust me, the gun-toting maniacs out there will kick the crap out of the Satanists. They don't let them fool you. I learned this in the army in Germany too late. We would have rolled right across East Germany and the Soviet Union with all the equipment we had. But I didn't believe it. I didn't know this. But when I watched the Gulf War happen and Saddam's troops get their rear ends handed to them, I realized, man, we really would have won the Cold War. Russia is of no consequence to America. Okay, China is only a consequence because of their numbers and masses of men. But the Soviets, especially the communist Russians, today they might have a chance with technology. But anyway, I realized what a paper tiger they were. And this whole, the dark Satanist, we're behind the scenes running things, they wouldn't stand a chance if they came out in the open. It's like cockroaches, right? They just don't stand a chance when one goes running across the floor or there's an infestation. People go berserk and they'll burn the whole house down. That's why these people hide, because they know the truth. But they like to put it in movies like vampire movies where they're killing priests and stuff. In real life, that priest would kick that thing's ass. That scene in Salem's Lot, probably one of the better vampire movies ever made, where he just conks the priest in the head and takes out the parents. Yeah, that wouldn't happen in real parents. Parents like me, responsible parents. Yeah, the vampire would be running his ass down the street with me chasing. So, went off on my little tangent. But anyway, these three unclean spirits reveal themselves in wickedness in many different ways. And it's usually in groups of three. Like I just mentioned, one set of many. Okay? So there is no limit to depravity, but when it comes to certain things, they're, like I say, it's quantifiable. In other words, it can be measured, and it's in groups of three. Like all things, you can measure them in three main things. Like your body is your head, your limbs, and your torso. So three main body parts. So the real nitty gritty of these three frogs is obviously if you have a father, a son, and a spirit, okay, on your body, because that graphic shows you Jesus in the underworld, where he's neodymium hanging between the two thieves. And at his feet is his mother. It's the scene where the women were weeping at Jesus' feet. That's the good version, okay? It's the crucifixion scene. It's where we receive our forgiveness because the ultimate sacrifice has been paid in the Son of God, okay? On the other side of the temple graphic exists this whole other evil set of rules. And once you realize this, you're like, so if there's a good version, there is a bad, always. That is how the universe ticks. Okay? I mentioned earlier in an earlier video about God using these evil reptilians to hold up the Ark of the Covenant using an insulated stick. Those are the staves, the staffs, staves, sticks. Just like linemen today, they throw in the switches using what's called a hot stick. I've used them many, many times. There's one that goes like this, makes a noise. We call it a shotgun. The straight one with the little, you can screw things on the end. It usually has just a little finger. That's called a switch stick. The original ones were made of, I think it was poplar wood, and they had to be meticulously cared for. The fiberglass ones of today, you can beat the living daylights out of them. But you should wipe them down with citrus wipes, the disposable wipes. But back in the day, those wood ones, you had to watch out. They couldn't get wet, blah, 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 blah. But God was insulating himself from us and insulating us from himself using this technique where they had special garments and they had insulated stick. And the people out of the 12 tribes, he chose these ones, the Levites, where I said earlier in the different video, levity is laughter. Okay? That's a good aspect of the Levites. Okay? The bad aspect, if you want to see the bad aspect, you got to read about Eli and his two sons, Hophni and Phinehas. They were scumbags. They were dirtbags. Eli was hot and cold. Okay. But, you know, there were things that he did where, like, he accused, I believe it was Hannah, Samuel's mother. She was weeping and praying deep in her heart that she wanted a child. And he called her a drunk. But then when she said, hey, I'm not drunk, I'm grieving, he realized, oh, he had made a mistake, and he blessed her. So he's a type of Lucifer before the fall and after the fall. Okay. His two sons are complete evil maggots. Now, this is a good example. Okay? That for most of your Levites were probably decent people, but there's like Americans are good people. Our government, there's scum in our government. Clearly, Israeli people are good people. And a lot of their government exists above board where they do things on the books and they're accountable. But there's sections to their government where they're scumbags. And they don't care about Israel. They care about money. That's every government, every world government. It has nothing to do with Israel. It's common through the United States, Israel, Canada, you name it. There's bad players in those organizations. Okay? So these three frogs, that river that they come from, that they cross, is always your center line. There's your 4.5. So you got 4 and 4 is 8, and that's the 9. You got the 1 divided by 2 always on your center line. Okay? If you open up a walnut, you go, hey, there's 2 brains in here. How come I only have 1? Ta-da! You're a genius. Nature teaches you, hey, I should have another brain. And a lot of people say that's what God meant when he said those 2 become 1 when man marries his wife. And I would disagree with that. I would, now being on the other side of a divorce, I understand that both people before they go into that marriage should have 4 quadrants to their brain. They shouldn't be relying on each other. Okay? I had a huge problem with that one. But I think the institution of marriage has been hijacked and perverted, and the church jumped right in bed with government. Big government, big pharma, big marriage. You use that term right now. Put that in your jargon, because that is true. They have hijacked what marriage was all about, which is making children. All this treating a woman like a princess, it's all crap. Okay, putting them up on a pedestal, it's all crap. But anyway, I don't want to get down that rabbit hole. We're talking about these 3 unclean spirits and how they're an opposite mirror image, an evil hologram of the Father, Son, and Spirit. So that means if there's a 3, 6, and 9 that are good, there has to be an evil 3, 6, and 9. Ta-da! Correct. Okay, and by the way, if you put 2 3s next to each other, those are, you go out to the street, if you have overhead power lines and you see your friendly neighborhood transformer, there's 2 coils in there. Your primary takes it from 7,900 volts or 4,160 or whatever you got for voltage out there, 2,000 roughly volts. For some reason, I can't remember the voltage at 2,000, but it's roughly 2,000. I want to say 2,160, but that's not it. But anyway, there's that, steps it down. That's your step down coil. And then there's this one over here where it goes through the oil magically. I'll just call it magic. It's not. It's through induction. And it goes to the other coil and energizes that coil through the process of induction. And it steps down the voltage to what you can use in your house, 120, 240. In Europe, you're at 208. So those are 2 3s next to each other. All right? So these 2 3s, how much is 3 and 3? 6. Now you go up, you got 6 and 6. What do you got there? 12. That's a 1 and a 2. 1 plus 2 is what? You're back to the 3. Now you go 9 and 9. What's that? It's 18. What's a 1 and an 8? It's a 9. So now you've just taken the whole order of things and changed it. So now you got 6, 3, 9. Now the 3 is in the central position, isn't it? Yes, it is. So you got to pay attention to this. You have to know the basic math and the basic science of the Bible. And it's very pertinent to our modern world. Okay? So you want to start changing things around? That's all you got to do. Double the image. Have a good side here and a bad side here. Now you got 3 and 3. What's that equal? That's just 6 now. What do you got here? Well, if you got the 6 and 6, you got 12. There you're back to your 3. So those 2 just changed positions, didn't they? Yes, they did. And that 9 and 9 is 1, 8. That didn't move, did it? The 9 is always like that. Okay, it doesn't really change that much. If you watch, like I say, Marco Roden, Marco with a K, and Randy Powell, Vortex VBM, Vortex-based mathematics videos on YouTube, which I recommend you do, because you'll learn stuff. And you'll learn about this number system that's very unique. But anyway, I'm going to go on here and talk about some things. Oh, very interesting point. So a frog comes out of the mouth of who? The dragon, the beast, and the false prophet. There's your three again. Okay, so you got these three frogs. One comes out of a dragon, one comes out of the beast, one comes out of who? False prophet. Now, if you have the good Father, Son, and Spirit, and the bad Father, Son, and Spirit, right? Father, Son, then Spirit. Father's 9, Son is 6, Spirit is 3. Well, the evil version of that would be F is who? False prophet. He's the counterpart to Father. You got Son, the 6. Who's the counterpart? That's the beast. And then you got the dragon. That would be the counterpart to the spirit. So if you first get into things biblical and like me, I didn't have any of this information that I'm giving you. I had to figure this stuff out. No theologians that were in the Bible college that I attended had any idea about this. Maybe the top dude, the head guy. And he wasn't telling anybody. Years later, when I had to think about my life, I had to really do some, I had to step back objectively and look at that church organization and say, because, these people from 33 have infiltrated at all levels. And this guy became very powerful down south. And things began to happen with him, like amazing stuff. Like if I told you some of the stories, you would say that could never happen. Trust me, it happened. And this guy had an amazing connection to God and the Spirit. And I had to sit back and say, did he know all these things and not tell anyone? So I had to do a retrospective look on my life. And I'm probably 90% sure that this guy knew what I'm telling you, but he probably didn't tell anybody in that organization. If he did, it wasn't a whole lot of people. But having that periodic table to explain these strange anomalies in the Bible is critical. Okay? And having the ability to look at a zodiac and know where things biblical go on that X, Y, Z coordinate system. I'm giving this stuff to you. I had to eke all this stuff out. My editor and I, we have some good laughs. And he's like, you should be more savvy on computers. And I'm like, dude, do you know how hard it was to come up with this material? It was brutal. Okay? It was very difficult for I can't operate computer stuff. I blow a stack. I have blood shooting out of my ears. Computers to me are designed like automotive stuff by engineering imbeciles who they'll do these amazing things and then blow it on the 1 yard line by doing something so stupid. I'm amazed. Like you'll be typing and all of a sudden your page will disappear and you just spent an hour typing, it's gone. I still to this day don't understand how that's possible. But anyway, let me go on here. We touched on the dragon, beast, false prophet, good mirror, bad mirror image. And it's an antagonistic, atheistic version. The good 369, Father, Son, Spirit. The antithesis to that is this antagonistic Satan version. Okay. And just remember Marco Rhodes. Look at your hands. Your hands tell you everything you need to know. You don't have 10 fingers. So let me get on the list here. I could get into the real nitty gritty where down at your crotch, there's 3 things that happen, right? Solids, liquids, and reproduction. This is a very good example of what I'm saying. All the 3 things in your crotch, those 3 things, you know what I'm talking about. Liquids come from there, solids come from there, and you have to reproduce to continue the population. Otherwise, we die. Okay? You got to have progeny. If you don't, it's over. So those things, you can eat healthy or you can eat bad. So what you eat and drink, the solids and liquids, that's what you'll produce out the other end. And you can use your tallywhacker, your twig and 2 bits for good, okay? Or you can do evil. You can spread disease and live a simp life where you're not contributing to society. You're not contributing to technology. You're just this sex tool. You're a tool, okay? So that is a perfect example of how these Satanists have said, oh, see, you got the center line, and down here, that's where the brass altar was, okay? And that represents you downstairs. And see how it's connected to Jesus? So it's the same. They're the same. No, they're not. No, they're separated from your heart to your groin. Jesus is up here and here. That's outside the temple. All right? That's anything below your belt. God's not concerned with it. All right? Except for, like I say, reproductive purposes and you taking care of your health. So we're going to wrap it up here. All right, so we'll just leave it off there. Just wanted to touch on what the 3 frogs represent and how they all tie in. And we'll leave it right there. All right, well, thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And check us out in the links in the description.